Hello, my name's Samitha. As you had correctly guessed, I am here to talk about White Sand, Sanderson's only graphic novel, or the only graphic novel that has an ending anyway. To make this summary brief, White Sand is a story about magicians seeking to maintain their recognition by a council. That council contains a representative from each of the different professions that exist. I believe they can be close to representatives from factions or something akin to that. Anyway, the council is located in a place called Dayside, which is the side of a planet with the sun on it 24/7, while Darkside is the other half that has no sun at all. We don't know much about Darkside's government at first, but as I've mentioned, Dayside has this all-encompassing council that is trying to dissolve the magician's place in it. The protagonist, Kenton, belongs to a group of magicians that in the book form a profession called the Sandmasters, who can, as the name states, control sand. Sandmasters are, at some point near the beginning of a story, mind you, massacred by a neighboring city with a grudge. And their profession is almost dissolved by the council as consequence. You know, because Sandmasters are kind of douchebags to everyone before the massacre happened. Either way, Kenton is there to stop them from occurring by getting his enemies to vote for his profession's survival. As there were a few survivors left, and Kenton had to take the lead. Now, if you did not get my distaste from what I just said, this is the moment to be explicit. I did not think the premise was compelling. Not at all, I wouldn't recommend. But if you're here, it means you want more than just a sentence to explain what I mean. For the rest of the video, I'll be going over my reasons why I think White Sand was terrible. While we're at it though, I will be drawing Kenton as shown in the graphic novel, and I will be taking some liberties here, but I mean, he's supposed to be mixed, so his skin should be darker anyhow. If you have not heard about White Sand at all, Kenton was born from a Dayside father and a Darkside mother. Daysiders are white people, Darksiders are black people, even if it makes no sense, because more melatonin means more exposure to the sun, and Darksiders have no sun whatsoever, but okay. Being completely transparent about the whole White Sand situation, I'm barely able to say what it was about. I don't know if it was my lack of engagement or if it was truly poor storytelling, but I cannot, for the love of Sanderson, tell you about factions or religious groups or anything else besides the main point of a novel. I cannot remember, and I think that's something valuable in itself. If I hear right from those who roam the internet, White Sand is the first story Sanderson created, beyond Elantris or Mistborn. This is why I cannot judge Sanderson for White Sand at all. Regardless, I have to be honest, I cannot remember what it was about because I could hardly care for this story, even when I started eagerly. I mean, present a graphic novel to an artist and I'm sure they'll be excited. But here we are. As an artist, or a wannabe artist, whichever title you deem more appropriate for me, I have some thoughts, and I want to offer some examples too. I mostly concur with another booktube channel here, and I will address a few of their points, so yes, they come first. I just want to expand on it a little more and add a few things of my own. Let's begin. My first reason. Yes, so my first point is that the art is confusing at some points. It doesn't happen all that much, but when it does, it's jarring. I believe the worst example here is when the letters got confused and attributed a speech bubble that was set from Kenton's party to the enemy, so I was trying to grasp at straws here. The enemy was saying, what exactly? It took me a little bit of time to finally cringe at the mistake. Good thing it was an obvious one, or else it would have affected more than just the sequence. Imagine some character saying something that they shouldn't and confusing the whole meaning of a story, and then you being lost for the rest of the volume or part of it. Sucks, doesn't it? There are also times when characters are somewhere in the room, then in the next panel they've changed positions too drastically, and you kind of have to fill in the gaps with your imagination. Which we shouldn't really do much of, as it's supposed to be a visual medium, but whatever. Don't know much about comics anyway, and maybe this is commonplace in them. What I know is manga, and manga is flawless at this. Whether this is a fair comparison or not, I don't know. Curse me for not liking comics. Anyway, let me show you what I mean. In this panel, for example, the guy in green is standing behind Kenton. Next, he's sitting down sipping a drink and Kenton is behind him. I think Kenton turned around and the guy in green sat down and grabbed a drink. All in that simple panel jump. That isn't much, but I have to wonder why the artist made such a choice. If there is movement, it should mean something, accentuate silences or serve another purpose. But if you notice, dialogue here kept on as if nothing had happened. To offer a different example, in this fragment from the first chapter of I Am a Hero by Hanasawa Kengo, this guy is looking at the punching bag. Then hears something, we see the movement, and the guy is now glued to the radio. Without needing to understand the words, we see how he turned around and why. There is something super important on the radio, and we see the urgency in his movement and his expression. There is a pause, and he turns as a consequence of something happening. We don't see the punching bag, then turn to the next panel of him crouched over the radio. Might be nitpicking, but the difference in immersion is huge. If you've not read manga so far, I suggest you do, and you'll notice the difference. Okay, so this one you can take with a grain of salt. It could be attributed to the different artists handling the same characters in their own style, but I think there's more to it than that. I think character design was not the strong suit of the story. I can't say if it's simply not a strong point for the artist involved, or if it was something much simpler like budget, but you can see the consequences. Characters are sometimes hard to tell apart and sometimes harder to remember. As an example, Lord Masterel has no distinguishable features from the rest of his Sandmasters, despite him being the ruler. As you see here, there is little difference between these two characters on the page, one being Lord Masterel and the other being Kenton's good friend / mentor, I don't remember, but this other guy is lower status than Kenton's father. But you can't tell just by looking. Now, I know they're different, but honestly, it was hard to see those subtle changes between them, let alone remember them for future volumes. Because it's important to remember them both, I tell you. Another example is a bit less important because it could only be the different styles I mentioned, but it caught me by surprise because I had to go back and remember which character was the one I was seeing. They may have subtle differences here, but don't you think these two characters look different from each other? I had trouble remembering he was the same Baon we met at the beginning of the novel. Also, now that we're talking about Chrysalia's bodyguards, once you do think about it, they have always been the only two behind her, and of course they look different from each other, but I confess I thought the one shooting here was Baon, not the one standing, because he's holding the shotgun and Baon was the one with the shotgun always. This might be me, distracted by how little I was invested in this, but then again, there's still something there regarding character design. It should not be difficult to distinguish between characters as it was in White Sand. Maybe they don't have enough characteristics to distinguish them from one another. And I think that's something that could be avoided with a little more characterization. Like I said, I thought Baon was the one with a shotgun. So then, why was this other guy grabbing a shotgun? I do have to say, this is something that requires enormous amounts of skill. And not even I have been able to design characters as professional artists do. So it's just plain hard to do overall. But I think there might be something else besides the skill of the artists. I'll touch on this later, so let's continue for now. I'm not the most knowledgeable artist, I know. And like I said before, I am no expert on comics, let alone manga. But I do know that telling a reader what they should be reading with arrows on the page is something I haven't seen at all. This I won't go too much into because it's pretty straightforward, but how come this is something that happens 3 times? Not much either, but it still happened 3 more times than it should have. The good thing here is that it's something affecting the first section of the comics, and future artists remove them, thankfully. This one could be a lot more subjective, but hear me out. For some reason, reading White Sand feels a bit boring. And I think it could be due to the page structure. I cannot say the pages are bland because there's a lot going on inside the page, so I think bland might not be the word here. I think it is bland because all pages are structured similarly, but at the same time there's too much going on with each panel. It almost feels too crowded. And worst of all, the design of a page does not feel purposeful. I think this doesn't happen always though, and there are times when you can feel how the page design aligns to storytelling purposes, like right here, when Kenton is jumping from that large rock to show how he descends. You see how Kenton's jump feels quite natural, and you see the progression as he falls and how he uses his skills. But then where there is a lot of dialogue happening, that structure falls apart, and there are just diagonals for the sake of them, and then they add a lot of text and exaggerated poses to make it all less stiff, and you get a cluttered page like this one. It's not the end of the world, but it's something to point out. It might give us signs as to why it's not as engaging as other works in the medium, because everything is cramped and everything reads the same. This will be the last of the reasons regarding the art side of things. Budget. I think this might be the biggest and most contributing of all, actually. If you think about it, books are slightly easier to put together than graphic novels because there is the whole art part missing. Like we've established so far, I am no expert in this either, but it's words on a page. There's no having the story and then having to figure out the best page layout to help with storytelling, and then there's the drawing part, the coloring part, and then the lettering. Plus, the number of words that could fit in a single page is significantly larger than the number of panels you could fit in one. And sure, descriptions are hardly needed in a graphic novel, but I believe it can't compare to the number of panels a page needs to have in order to be legible. And I think this was the greatest contributing factor to White Sand being bad. There's just so much you could do to tell a Sanderson story with a limited amount of pages. Each page sums, and I think that's why clutter was necessary, and I think that is why characters had to move from one position to the next in just a simple panel jump. This is also why character design wasn't the focus and why the letterist could have gotten confused. I believe this could be a passion project, but sometimes it can go the other way around and people could just use the huge marketing boost of a Sanderson story to present a project that wasn't going to deliver on anything. It's still possible that it could have been a small bunch of passionate individuals with a small budget, looking to make something too great for what they could handle. Or it could just be the investors of a company interested in a quick buck through minimal efforts. I can't say, I do not know the dealings of Dynamite Entertainment behind the scenes, but with how greedy shareholders can be, it could very well be a possibility. Moving on to story elements, the first thing on my mind was character arcs. Kenton, the protagonist, did not have a character arc, and it was a bit confusing in a way. He starts off by being this rebellious kid, someone who doesn't like the ways of his profession, but after the massacre, he changes and becomes their number one supporter. A massacre can go ahead and change someone, true, but then his arc got completed before the story began. That's a weird way of doing it. Not that it cannot be done well, but I'm sure it wasn't the case here. Chrysella, the other character we see quite a bit, had no arc either. She begins as a scholar in a noble lady and ends up as a scholar in a noble lady. I have no distinct memories of her though. Perhaps she could have been a better protagonist than Kenton, as people say, but I can't say she had a conflict in her storyline that made her grow as a... Hold on. I'm about to spoil things. Spoilers start now. I've not said anything too specific yet, so rest assured, you only know that Kenton and another secondary character have no arcs. And all you need to know is that the other characters we see who do change have arcs that are not quite satisfying, as they change just for plot reasons, not because those arcs say something. If you want no spoilers, you can click off the video now, because I won't hold back on future arguments. It's all spoilers from now on. Alright, where were we? Let's go back to Chrysella for a minute. She found her lost fiancé and the sand magic she searched for, but it did not do much for her character. She was just happy to have accomplished her goals, and correct me if you know, but does she go back to dark side? Nothing deviates from her original thoughts, desires, or needs. I'm not sure if you can call that a character arc. Moving on, the two characters that did change from their original counterparts were the lady in black, tracked Ice, I believe, and the guy in green. But I'm not sure what those arcs say, to be honest. Ice is someone who turns from hating Sandmasters to tolerating Kenton and vouching for him because it was necessary for the story's resolution. Not because there was something in her she had to confront, or something that changing to Kenton's side would have made sense for her growth. It was just for the plot's sake. Same as the guy in green. He always seemed to hold back from fights because he wanted to remain near Kenton's side, as always. But then, when he stopped withholding, he remained at Kenton's side still. He just became the leader of his profession, but he's still friends with Kenton. I'm thinking there were supposed to be more volumes after this, which would explain the lack of an ending to his arc. Maybe, but I don't know. The main plot seemed finished though. It's weird. I know many people praise the magic system and I think it's pretty cool, but let me make my case. I got the sensation that the magic system has no real cost. Don't get me wrong, it does cost a Sandmaster individually, as they dehydrate the more they use their powers, and in a desert-like environment, it's a tough thing to manage, but I'm not sure I understood the impact it had socially. Why were the religious extremists so angry with the Sandmasters? The Sandmasters were using their god to perform magic, and I think it's blasphemous, alright, but it's not as if the sand was lost forever after being used. It's not like they were killing their god or anything. The extremists were perhaps jealous of the Sandmasters more than anything because they could use their god's powers and they could not. But I don't think we know enough of their religion to really understand the extent they're willing to go to honor their god. From what I know, those religious extremists find that Sandmasters corrupt the sand, but do they have a way to know what corrupted sand looks like? Or is it just some irrational thing they've clung to? I think it would be more of the latter than the former, but then Ice also hated Kenton, and she was less of an extremist. I mean, if there were more direct conflict here, like if people needed the white sand for religious rituals or whatever, and the Sandmasters were turning it black as they used it, it could maybe have a more significant role in the plot. And perhaps then we could finally understand why Sandmasters are hated as much as they were. I don't know, I can somehow tell it all makes sense the way it is, but honestly, I don't find I understood the world and its politics enough to know why I should have cared about the Sandmasters and the religious conflict around them. And unfortunately, the magic system is the one at the center of it all. Cool idea, but I'm not sure it connects that well with the main conflict. Or maybe I was just too distracted to grasp all of it. Let me know if I was. I know this is an unpopular opinion, and I apologize if I'm speaking out of line here, but I had to voice it. If, only if, you could take a look at all plot lines, you would see that some of them don't contribute at all to the main story. If that main story is about Kenton protecting his profession from doom, and maybe even finding the mastermind behind the massacre, the whole dark side plot is useless. Chrysalla's story doesn't coincide with that of Kenton's, except maybe because Kenton is a sand magician and Chrysalla was looking for one. But that only ticks a box, as we've concluded before. Chrysalla fits into the story because Kenton needs a diplomat on his side. Not because finding a Sandmaster will pivot Kenton's storyline, he himself is one, so it makes no sense it would. Or because finding Chrysalla's late husband will do anything for him. Some might contradict me and say Nilto was actually useful because if it weren't for him, Kenton wouldn't have saved Ice's family, thus not gotten a vote from her. I disagree, not because it wasn't vital to that ending, but because Sanderson willed it to happen. Not because the story commanded it, or because the characters made it so. It was just because the author wanted that end, and needed something to help him get there. For some, plot reasons would be enough. They, after all, move the plot forward. However, I find that plot reasons can feel empty the majority of the time. I've seen some other writers say this, and maybe even Sanderson himself. The way a story comes together is because there's a theme within it that unites everything to give each and every scene a purpose. I can't find a theme within Chrysala's and maybe tracked Ice's plotlines, so I think Chrysala, her bodyguards, and Nilto are mainly there to get Kenton's story to resolve itself favorably. They could have been easily replaced by other characters and nothing would have changed. While I was trying to figure out the theme of the story, I thought, for a brief moment, that maybe betrayal could be a part of it. It did seem as a common thread among all characters. There was someone who betrayed the Sandmasters, then there was a betrayal from Chrysala's bodyguards, Ice's co-worker also betrayed her, and there was another betrayal amongst one of the professions. The guy with the boats, I think. It seemed like a pretty common thing happening to many of the characters, so there it was. There had to be something related to betrayal somewhere. And I kept looking for it. Kenton caught and stopped the perpetrator, Chrysala got rid of hers, and then Ice and the other guy both also dealt with theirs. Apart from everyone being stopped, the one thing I could gather from all of it was this. Evil is defeated through conviction and faith. Notice I replaced the word betrayal with evil here, mostly because betrayals were presented as evil deeds throughout. They were not shown with nuance, they were shown as evil. So more than betrayals being something that happens out of survival or something that people are forced into, it was presented as an evil act, born out of greed, and greed is evil. Then again, it could also be those who take advantage of others can be defeated through conviction and faith. But then, did Kenton defeat the council with conviction and faith? One could say that metaphorically the council was full of evil people, so Kenton did defeat the council with conviction and faith. True, that could be the theme. You can overcome all troubles with conviction and faith. But somehow, I think Sanderson did not make the council as evil, so Kenton did not defeat that evil. Maybe he was all on something related to obstacles, so what were those betrayals all about? Betrayals are obstacles, true, but why so many of them? Obstacles could come in different forms too, you know? I can't figure it out. There was either more than one thing Sanderson wanted to explore here, or there were betrayals for betrayal's sake. For shock value, maybe? In the end, I think the novel was all over the place. The whole point was for Kenton to keep the Sandmasters as part of a council, but to what end? We don't know, because all cool kids are in it. I couldn't understand why belonging to the Taisha was so important. It could sound like belonging to the government is important, but not everyone is a part of it. And there are important people out of it. And what would they gain from belonging? Sandmasters are powerful. They could not be a part of a Taisha, and I'm sure nothing would happen. They were not being persecuted or killed, nor were they forbidden from using their magic. What would the DM gain from staying? And why did Kenton want to help the DM survive? He himself suffered the abuse from them and his own father, so why? Just why? In the end, Kenton got his wish to remain in the DM just because he's a cool kid. He defeated evil, or overcame obstacles because he had faith in himself, and he helped Chrysala check a box because that's what she initially wanted. What was all this for? Help me see the point in this, please. So, this is it. I've pretty much covered every reason I could think of. I know there was a lot of frustration right here, but I can't lie and say it was perfect or minimally flawed. It definitely wasn't. I would like to hear anyone's thoughts on White Sand, if maybe anyone can make me like it, or I don't know. I like to see opinions out there. And just to let you guys know, I actually read those 3 separate volumes. I did not get the omnibus edition, so maybe there are some important things that were corrected over time. On another note, here is the one and only Cool Kid Kenton. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see each other next time. Bye bye.